with. Put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. If time is available, we will answer on-topic questions toward the end of the webinar. Today we will be discussing labor in South Carolina with our special guest, Mia McLeod, the 2022 South Carolina Democratic candidate for governor. Mia is currently the state senator from South Carolina District 22. Prior to that, she served in the South Carolina House from 2011 to 2016. Mia has a law degree from the University of South Carolina School of Law. She's a seventh generation South Carolinian and a small business owner. We also have on today's panel Charles Brave, who is the current president of the South Carolina AFL-CIO. And a final panelist for today is Keith Gray Sr. He's a progressive Democrat running for South Carolina House District 45 and a former steelworker shop steward and sheet metal local 49 training director. So we want to thank all of our participants today. We've got Elaine is with us today. She has a question that will be asked a bit later. And yeah. So once again, good morning. Thanks for joining the Our Revolution South Carolina May meeting. Please introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you're with. Put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. If time is available, we will answer on-topic questions toward the end of the webinar. Today, we will be discussing labor in South Carolina with our special guest, Mia McLeod, the 2022 South Carolina Democratic candidate for governor. We also have on today's panel Charles Brave, who is the current president of South Carolina AFL-CIO, and also Keith Gray Sr., the progressive Democrat running for South Carolina House District 45 and a former steelworker shop steward and sheet metal local 49 training director. Now let's go to Lucero Mesa and kick off our May forum.
Good morning. I will be very brief since we have a busy agenda and want us to be able to address all questions. I am pleased to welcome all of you to our bi-monthly meeting, a continuation of our commitment to provide a platform for discussion and to inform South Carolina voters about issues and how political decisions could affect our daily lives. Our guests today are candidates for governor, Senator Mia McLeod, Labor leader, Mr. Charles Brave, who is the current president of the South Carolina AFL-CIO, and Mr. Keith Gray, who is the progressive Democrat running for South Carolina House District 45. We appreciate you joining us today. And before we start the conversation with our guest, we are going to hear from Hal Ginsberg with Our Revolution National. Welcome, Hal.
Thank you so much, Lucero. And I always love being on these calls. I do a number of states, and South Carolina will always have a special place in my heart. It was one of the first states I worked with, and I just love Lucero and Alan and Keith. We've been together for quite some time now, along with many other great leaders in the Palmetto State. So it's really fun for me to do these calls. Also, I'm really excited because you do have a great candidate for governor, Mia McLeod, and we're just hoping that South Carolina does rally behind Senator McLeod, because obviously there are many, many changes that we need to make in South Carolina, but across the country. It's not as though South Carolina is somehow unique. Poor, struggling, and working people need a hand up, and we are simply not seeing that from leadership in Washington, in Columbia, or in state capitals around the country. So please, please, please support great progressives like Senator Mia McLeod and our revolution's own Keith Gray Sr. Both of them are on this call. And I mentioned working people. We're very, very fortunate to have Charles Brave, president of the South Carolina AFL-CIO, on this call. He is a longshore worker. And Mr. Brave, I saw you. I don't know if you remember me, but I remember seeing you. I'm certain it was at the Columbia Hotel. I think it was a Sheraton. I'm not really sure. Several years ago, pre-pandemic times, good times back then. Let me just really quickly tell you about a couple of campaigns we're working on here. There's me with the sort of sunglasses shaded, standing behind somebody a little more famous in the front on the left side of that slide. There's Bernie. This was our Medicare for All rally in Washington just 2 days ago, Thursday. Very, very exciting. And on the right, some of our great activists at the hearing posing with Senator Sanders. So very, very exciting stuff. And we are pushing. It is a long, hard slog. It is a marathon. It is definitely not a sprint, but we do deserve, as a human right, healthcare, and we're going to keep fighting for it at our revolution. Also, just want to bring up our block insurgents from the ballot campaign. And I don't believe we've identified any in South Carolina, but in Georgia, just south of you, Marjorie Taylor Greene was fomenting the rioting that we saw back on January 6th of 2021. And if you want to get involved, I just put my email, please, hal@ourrevolution.com. Would love to work with you on our nationwide 14.3 campaign to block insurgents. And finally, if you want to help us financially so we can continue to push for needed change, needed policies, we'd love to just take, $5 a month if you can afford it. ourrev.us SCMEM. That's South Carolina. I'm hearing a little bit of audio. May need to mute Senator McLeod for just a moment and then ask her to rejoin. Am I muting myself? No. There, I can see myself, so I know I'm not muting myself. All right, let me go to back to Lucero so we can introduce our first guest, the state senator gubernatorial candidate, Mia McLeod. Lucero, over to you.
Thank you, Hal. Amazing job our Revolution National is doing all over the country. I am so proud of you and ourselves too. Thank you,
Thank
Hal.
you. And you deserve it to be proud of yourself.
Thank you so much. We are going to start with the introductions. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Let's start with Senator Mia McLeod. She is currently the state senator from South Carolina District 22, my district. Previously, she served in the South Carolina House from 2011 to 2016. Senator McLeod has a law degree from the University of South Carolina, and she's a 7th generation South Carolinian and a small business owner. Senator, please tell us about yourself and your campaign. Hello?
You may have to unmute. Senator McLeod, I muted you for just a moment because there was some background noise. Should we go to President Brave at this point, perhaps, and then come back?
Okay, we'll see that. We are also have the pleasure to have today Mr. Charles Brave, who is the current president of the South Carolina AFL-CIO. Mr. Brave, please tell us about your purpose and activities with the AFL-CIO.
Okay, first of all, I want to say good morning to everyone. I'm Charles Brave Jr., president of the South Carolina AFL-CIO, and this is my second term, and we serve a 2-year term. So this is my second term. The AFL-CIO stands for American Federation of Labor Congress of Industrial Organization. This is my second term, and in my second term, it's a lot of interesting things has happened and is happening in the state of South Carolina. In my first term, when I was first elected after Aaron McKee, I told the board of 22 that we labor must take the state of South Carolina in a different direction. And what I mean when I say it in a different direction, labor has to take the forefront of changing South Carolina and taking it in a different direction. And what I mean by when I say that, I have a saying that I was saying now for the last 30 years. If you change South Carolina, you would change the South. And when I finally was convinced by that, for some of South Carolinians, they know we had a labor struggle that took place back in 2000, Free to Charleston 5. Well, I was one of the original 9 out of Free to Charleston 5. And back then, in 2000, 99 and 98, and when it happened in 2000, the state of South Carolina, Charlie Condon, and Swacky and those got together, and the 9 of us was facing 30 years to life for 2 charges. That's standing up for what we believed in the labor movement. And they said that we incited a riot, and along inciting a riot, we were trespassing. And so those 2 charges that trumped us up, that we were facing 30 years to life. Here, now years later, I find myself now president of South Carolina, AFL-CIO, where I'm the head of for representing all working people across the state of South Carolina, where the union density in South Carolina is only 2.5% of the organization is unionized. And the reason being so, because there's this myth across the state of South Carolina that there is no union in the state of South Carolina. And for these many years, there are many unions in the state of South Carolina. And I've pledged this time around I did some endorsement of Senator McLeod as governor. I did something that was never done in the state of South Carolina when we actually endorsed prior to the primary. And but what I'm so excited about now that I bring to the table, God has elevated me yet to another pretty powerful position in the state of South Carolina. I now find myself president of the International Longshoremen's Association, Local 1422, where we have, once we complete our training, we will then have on 3,900 people in our local. So then we are in the process of building relationships across the state of South Carolina, and labor is taking the forefront in this governor's race in the state of South Carolina. And like I told the membership on last night, as I closed, on Wednesday night, our local 1422 and had an endorsement meeting to endorse Senator McLeod as governor. And so I told him it's a must-win campaign. So we are doing several things now to engage, and I'm proud to say the International Longshoremen Association and ILWU, the International Union of Longshore Workers on the West Coast, has also came out endorsing Senator McLeod as our next governor.
Wow, thank you so much. I am so proud of all that leadership and all the work you are doing. And thank you so much for all the endorsement to Senator McLeod. That is amazing. We are going to fight until the last vote to make her win the governorship in South Carolina. That's something very much needed. And now we have the senator on the phone. Senator?
Hello.
How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing great. Good morning. How are y'all?
We are doing great. And I am so glad that you were able to connect because we were getting a little bit nervous here. So
I am traveling today. We are on some back roads. I hope that my service will hold up, but thank you. I want to thank Our Revolution, not only for your endorsement, but just for having me this morning. And I did have an opportunity to hear President Brave's remarks, and I'm so grateful to the AFL-CIO and the IA for their endorsements as well and their support. We are making great strides, and we are in this race to win it. So can't wait to. Do you guys want me to? I may have missed the instructions though. Would you like
Yes.
for me to introduce myself or?
Yeah, just a couple of minutes
Okay.
now.
Okay.
To talk about yourself and your campaign, and then we are going to start with the questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So I am Senator Mia McLeod. I was born and raised in Bennettsville, South Carolina. My family has been in business in South Carolina for 108 years, and we're still in business there today. I'm really proud of that. I'm running for governor because my young adult sons don't want to live in South Carolina as adults, and it made me think about the fact that we continue to lose our best and brightest, like my sons, every day because they leave our state in search of higher pay and equal opportunity and a better quality of life. But I am running because we can have that here. We just have to be committed to it, and we have to have a leader, a governor, who is committed to keeping our best and brightest here, and also making sure that our state is a state where everybody can thrive. And so I think the way to do that is not only through public education and fully and equitably funding our public education, but also investing in workforce development and making sure that all South Carolinians have access to quality, affordable health care. I think those are the gateways to economic prosperity and economic opportunities. I have always been pro business and pro labor. The Republicans would have us believe that you can only be one of those things, but it's not either or, it's both and I will remain committed. I'm the only candidate in this race who believes that the hardworking people of South Carolina deserve a living wage of at least $15 an hour. I am also the only I'm the only candidate in this race who has put my actions where my mouth is by introducing legislation to make that a reality for South Carolina. And I've also exposed the fact that our Department of Employment and Workforce here has been cheating the people of South Carolina out of their unemployment benefits. That was revealed to me during the pandemic when South Carolina workers were receiving anywhere from $42 a week to $326 a week, and the Department of Employment and Workforce was capping them at $326 a week, knowing that cap should be based on median household income. And so, even when they admitted that they were cheating the people of South Carolina, they didn't attempt to correct it. They decided that they would dig in and try and right that wrong legislatively. And so they passed a bill out of the Senate. I'm not sure what happened to it in the House that would give them retroactive discretion to do what they have been doing for years. So there's no shortage of, anti-labor rhetoric, anti-worker rhetoric here in South Carolina. We need a governor who is committed just to businesses across South Carolina, but is committed to the working people. I am that person, and I will remain committed, not just as a senator, but as governor when we win this race on June 14th and on November 8th.
Thank you so much, Senator. Great introduction. I appreciate it. And last but not least, we are going to have our very own Revolution South Carolina board member, Mr. Keith Gray, Sr., who is the Progressive Democrat running for South Carolina House District 45 and currently the first vice chair of the Lancaster Democratic Party. During a previous life, Keith had served as a shop steward for the Steelworkers Union and as a trainee director for the Sheet Metal Workers Local 49. Keith, please share with us what motivated you to run for office.
Well, thank you for having me on this panel this morning. A little on my background, I had worked my way through the University of South Florida, supporting a wife and daughter back when you could afford to do that. After graduation, I worked in the sheet metal trades at all levels, including having my own fabrication shop. And at one point, serving as the sheet metal training director. In my 40s, I made a career change and became a database developer. Springs hired me and moved me up here to Lancaster, where I've lived for 19 years, and I love it here. I've been active in our community with our community playhouse, Lancaster County, Lindsley Pettis Greenway, NAACP, Lancaster branch, and the Lancaster Housing Services. I became very active in the county party in 2012 and was elected party chair in 2016. After rebuilding our local county party with the help of many activists, I've stepped back to first vice chair in order to focus on this campaign. For too long, we've allowed the Republicans to doom our future by pulling us backwards. It's time for fresh ideas that will bring better and lower cost health care to all, to protect women's reproductive rights and autonomy over their own bodies, to bring better and higher paying jobs to our state, to increase and stabilize public school spending, to provide affordable college, trade, and technical training, to provide a healthier environment, safer, not only for us, but for the generations to follow. And we must address legal justice by refocusing resources to improve the protection of all of our citizens. Penny-wise, pound-foolish Republican policies that cost taxpayers more to try to fix poor outcomes and to generate private profits need to go. We will develop cost-effective approaches to address the root causes of issues. I look forward to supporting our future governor, Mia McLeod in Columbia. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Keith. And again, I am so excited to see how much support Senator Mia McLeod has. And of course, you, Keith, that you were also endorsed by us and you make us so proud. Thank you so much. And before I start with the questions to our panel, I want to remind our guests to restrict their answers to 2 minutes to be able to cover all questions. And all questions are for the 3 of you, as exception of our second question that is directed only to Senator McLeod. So let's start with the first question. Please share with us about the disadvantages of a right to work state from the worker's point of view. Have you thought of any strategy that you believe could be a good step forward to change that? Let's start with the senator.
Okay, I apologize that my video is not cooperating, but can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great question. I do believe that South Carolina, I call South Carolina a right to work for slave wages state. The union strength in the workforce is diminished because not all members of the collective bargaining unit are required to pay union dues, and it reduces the union's ability to further organize. And I think all of that's intentional because in South Carolina, this current governor and former governors have been anti-union. That much is clear. Workers in our state don't have the rights and protections they need in the workplace because of our antiquated right to work laws. And we need to repeal some of those and make sure that we take the additional steps to strengthen unions within our state. I've introduced legislation that is designed to do just that. In addition to exposing some of the ills and the challenges that they are creating, I've also introduced bills during the height of the pandemic to require, mandatory COVID-19 safety protocols in schools and in workplaces across South Carolina. Of course, our Republican majority did not allow those bills or amendments to pass. I introduced amendments on the floor to do the very same thing when they were giving employers safe harbor for knowingly exposing their workers to COVID. So there's no shortage of fights. But as governor, we can create expectations within our government to ensure that through our priorities and through spending, to ensure that contracts require stipulations that pay fair wages and ensure compliance with labor laws. We also need to ensure that our workplaces are safe and healthy for South Carolina workers. So many of our citizens have died from COVID-19 already. Even though they're not showing the numbers anymore, it's well over 18,000 the last time I checked. And many of those deaths were caused because folks were deemed essential workers during the pandemic and forced to go back to work, knowing that safety measures were not in place for them to do that. And the governor was leading the way, pushing them back into unsafe workspaces. So we have to allow our employees, our workers, to refuse to work in situations that will endanger their lives and their health. And that is, a challenge for South Carolina workers today because of the Republican majority's anti-union and anti-worker rhetoric and actions in the workplace. As governor, I can promise you I will change that and roll back that rhetoric and those actions and make sure that South Carolina is not only pro-business, but pro-labor.
Thank you so much, Senator. And Mr. Brave, what is your point of view about the right to work being a labor leader, and what is your strategy to help South Carolina?
Yeah, thanks again. And I got to concur with what the governor, I'm not saying the governor, because that's what I'm trying to speak it in reality. When she started talking about right to work. And when it comes to South Carolina and the myth that's overshadows the state of South Carolina when it comes to right to work, is still a great misunderstandings to individuals, to the state of what really right to work means. And the way South Carolina and the Republicans has took it is the right to work for less, is what they really put out there in the spell. But for an example, if it wasn't for the unions, there wouldn't be no middle class. And what really hurt working people in the state of South Carolina is the myth and the cloud that overshadowed the Republicans and even some Democrats when they put the myth out there that there's no union in South Carolina. And that truth, we're going to prove that that's not so in these round of negotiations. And not only negotiations, in this governor's race, we're going to show to them, because I vowed to the governor, Senator McLeod, that we, the labor, is going to take the forefront in actually getting her elected for sure. She is the candidate for all working people in the state of South Carolina. And I want to be clear when I say this. South Carolina is going to see, and labor, working people, is going to make a big difference in the state of South Carolina, because first and foremost, it is the right thing to do. For example, when it comes to ILA Local 1422, a person that's not in the union is still employed on the docks, but all the burden is placed on those of us in the union with the amount of union dues we pay. So the right to work piece of it is that they don't have to pay any union dues, but they're riding in the car right along with us who pay union dues. And we're changing that, and hopefully when Senator McLeod becomes governor, we can actually change that, and those who would be proud to join the union. We made several attempts to organize Boeing And the big businesses and management is spending more money in anti-union campaign, and they would actually pay it for the workers. They would pay that kind of monies to they actually keep right to work for less in place. And so where I'm at with it, each international unions has already pledged to come into South Carolina and put the necessary resources in to help us with the very low union density in the state of South Carolina, and to change the way the misunderstanding about right to work in the state of South Carolina.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we definitely need more labor unions in South Carolina. That right to work is like a very misleading slogan. And now, last but not least, Keith, do you mind sharing with us your thoughts about the right to work state?
Yes, and excuse my video was acting up right now. But anyway, I've worked in 3 different states with the so-called right to work laws. And in each case, it has been a major handicap for the workers. It kind of feeds into a intentional technique for reducing the resources that the unions have to organize with. And what a lot of the workers don't realize is even when they are in a unionized company, if they have not paid dues, they don't have a vote on who their leadership is or whether or not there's going to be a strike. So they may think that they're getting a ride, but it's an expensive one for all concerned. I'm looking forward to working with MIA and with the unions to change this status and protect the workers better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. If we have coalitions and if we work together, we are going to be stronger than if we work independently all on our own. And the following question is for Senator McLeod. Senator, what executive powers does the governor have to improve the rights of workers to organize? Would you, as governor, use them? You have 3 minutes to answer. Senator, are you there? Well,
no, she is not.
So while she reconnects, we are going to go with the 3rd question, but it's also important that she could hear. So Hal, is she disconnected?
Yes, it appears to be so.
Well, we can go back to her, and I am going to go with the 3rd question then. This question was originated at the South Carolina Environmental Caucus this past week. We find it quite important, and we decided to add it to our discussion today. That question was directed to Senator McLeod, but it would be good to hear from the 3 of you. Please plan to respond within the 2 minutes allowed time. Elaine Cooper with the Sierra Club and also a member of a Revolution South Carolina would formulate the question. Welcome, Elaine.
Hey, I hope that you do direct and do get a response from Senator McLeod, because this is directed to Senator McLeod. I phrased this question to support young Democrats who asked Joe Cunningham's labor question on a recent South Carolina Democratic Environmental Caucus forum. Young Democrats are our present and future hope. And so it's from young Jonah with the Young Democrats Labor Progressive Caucus and Sunrise Movement. Joe Cunningham has said before that he doesn't support labor unions. He also supports a $12 minimum wage instead of $15. Labor unions, when led responsibly, are a great change agent for improving working conditions, both for the workers and for the communities the companies operate in. My question, South Carolina Democratic leadership must support decent wages and decent working conditions in which workers can vote to unionize. Labor unions have been the backbone of other states. We are losing our South Carolina young working population, as Mia's talked about, and I've lost my son to Colorado as they seek better salaries and working conditions out of state. Do you think it's time to stop encouraging big business, laying out the welcome mat to big business, big corporate businesses from preying upon South Carolina workers? These big businesses seek to escape labor unions in other states and see South Carolina as easy pickings, workers with no ability to unionize for higher wages with better conditions. Do you think that our working population deserves a decent minimum wage? Because when workers get a decent minimum wage and can unionize to better working conditions, all of South Carolina has an improved quality of life. That's my question.
Thank you, Elaine. While the senator is able to reconnect, let's have Charles to tell us about what he thinks about this.
When it comes to Cunningham, that was one of the things that really turned us working people and unions against him when he became as congressman. When we proposed a question to him about the fight for 15, he told me just then, when he was congressman, that his constituents told him not to support the fight for 15. And he also told me after the fact that we really campaigned for him, and literally Local 1422 of the ILA, we endorsed Cunningham. And when that happened, I asked him to come and speak to the membership of ILA and to our board on why he did what he did. And to this day, he never actually came back and said it. And then here too again, the myth that elected officials put out there about unions in South Carolina, it's not true. It's still plagued. So I admire the question that they put out, because we always say, if we don't, in the state of South Carolina, don't recognize organized labor, which is unions in the state of South Carolina, and associations for all people, we're going to lose the young people, because once the young people go to college and they're turning a student loan, it takes them the rest of their life, even to pay a student loan back, but even with a minimum wage of $15 an hour. But at least it's a start. And I think Governor, either Senator McLeod have already took a strong position on that. She took a strong position on unions in the state of South Carolina. I know she's got disconnected for somehow.
I think that she's back.
But she's back. But
Yes.
That's why I know, that's why we are fighting. The unions are backing her, and we will get her elected, because we know the position and the strong position that she is taking on the fight for 15 and organized labor, which is union in the state of South Carolina.
Thank you so much, Charles. And Elaine, do you mind repeating the question to Senator McLeod in case she didn't hear it?
Okay, Senator McLeod. Basically, it was a very long question. I'll summarize it. On the recent South Carolina Environmental Caucus, a young person with Young Dems, Jonah and Sunrise, asked a question. He was upset that, and rightly so, that Joe Cunningham is not supporting unions and does not even support a minimum wage of he'd rather, instead of at least 15, he supports $12 an hour. And actually his response on the recent environmental caucus forum was that Joe Cunningham said, "I'm pro-worker," when asked this question from this young Democrat. So basically you get the gist, and could you give us your response?
And then we have 2 minutes. I'm sorry about the time, but we have 3 more questions to go, and all of them are important. So go ahead, Senator.
Right. So if I understand Elaine's question correctly, it is that Joe Cunningham described himself as pro-worker and he only supports a minimum wage of $12 an hour. Is that correct?
That is true. That was his response.
Okay. So I don't really know how to speak to that because I just believe that in South Carolina or in any state, we have to have somebody who is committed to a living wage. And in my opinion, that is at least $15 an hour. And I say at least because it should actually be more than that. But I know that it's impossible for working South Carolinians to live on $7.25 an hour. That we know for sure. That has already been proven. And I think that when it comes to labor unions, I'm told that I am the first candidate to run for governor who has openly embraced labor unions in South Carolina. And the reason that I openly embrace our unions is because the working people are the backbones of these businesses. And I've served on the South Carolina Chambers Board. I've been a fierce advocate for workforce development because I want South Carolinians to be able to take advantage of the high-paying jobs we do have right here, but without a fully and equitably funded public education system, without access to quality, affordable health care. Sick people don't work, dead people don't either. And it just makes no sense to me for us to continue to do things that are counterproductive. As governor, I will not only commit to elevating the position of unions across South Carolina, but elevating those conversations, the conversations that we need to be having to make sure that we roll back the rhetoric that people are starting to believe, because this rhetoric has been in place for many years, and we have vilified and maligned labor unions across South Carolina, and in doing so, we've vilified and maligned working people. And yet, during the height of the pandemic, the Republicans and Governor McMaster decided, hey, these are our essential workers. They need to go back to unsafe workplaces for $7.25 an hour and put their lives on the line, put their health on the line for us to line our pockets. That's not in my DNA. It's not who I am. My family, as I said, has been in business for 108 years, and I understand the plight of everyday working people. And I also started my business in 2003 to make sure that, I stay connected with the challenges, and I have been connected with the challenges of working people since then. So we just need a governor who is willing to prioritize the needs and the challenges of working people across South Carolina. We need a governor who is not afraid to say, hey, I understand that because of the labor unions have created the middle class. And if we want to get back to having a middle class, I mean, we are dealing with the working poor as we speak across South Carolina because of these Republican policies. We need somebody who is going to be a champion for working people. I am that candidate, and I'm proud of it. And so I will continue to openly acknowledge and embrace the sacrifices and the hard work that not only working people have made to improve this state, but that labor unions have continued to make to improve our state.
Thank you, Senator. Keith, would you like to add to these thoughts?
Yes, and one issue that Elaine brought out that you don't hear any discussion about is in these big tax concession packages that the state offers to these big companies to move here. In many cases, that our South Carolina taxpayers are paying for union busting in their
That's
original
right.
home states. And that really offends me because it takes away from our citizens to bust a union in another state. And we definitely need to get a handle on this with qualifiers and maybe that make sure that these companies pay their way and take care of their new employees here in South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. You have been so well behaved, having your questions to the 2 minutes, and we have 3 more questions to go. So we have like around 15 minutes. So I am hoping we can make it because all of these questions are very important. And the 4th question for all of you is, what can be done to improve the conditions for gig workers of subcontractors in South Carolina? And what can be done to lower the minimum number of hours worked weekly to trigger benefits? Senator?
Okay, sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. So the question is, what can be done to improve the conditions for gig workers, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think a major cause of unstable work in our state is that much of the labor force for major companies is employed directly through temp agencies, staffing companies, and even independent contractors or gig workers are misclassified as independent contractors. I believe that practice is just a way for companies to avoid paying higher wages and benefits. We have to make sure that these companies aren't able to get around protecting and paying working people across South Carolina. As governor, I'll continue to promote family-friendly policies and employee-friendly policies. And, those are the kinds of things that I believe will give South Carolinians the dignity and decency of fair pay, good working conditions, and safe workplaces.
Thank you, Senator. Charles?
Yes, like the governor just said, Senator McLeod just get through saying. And I think what we really need to do, we have to create some laws on misclassification of how they are actually, these big companies are coming in here and exploiting workers. The state of South Carolina has consented to using temp service for everything. And soon as someone get their 90 days in, they let them go. And then whenever, for example, the state of South Carolina got a fire you at will. If you don't like the way a worker look, you can fire with no explanation. The workers don't have no kind of grievance process of anything, and the company's just taking advantage of a lot of that. But the main thing is that we're going to have to introduce legislation to combat a lot of things, a lot of these companies that's coming into the state of South Carolina, because a lot of the manufacturers that's coming into the state of South Carolina, what is attracting them to all of these tax deductions that they're just giving them. For example, one that just irks me to the core, that they gave Volvo a 40-year tax break. Who does this kind of stuff? And then it seems like they don't got no laws in place to revisit the laws and the bills that they got in place. So I think that's what's going to have to start. And that's why I think unions under Senator McLeod, when she becomes governor, we can put the right kind of legislation and stuff in place. And I'm on say this while we're speaking about this. If it wasn't for the working people and organized labor, we would have had President Biden in the White House, because it was a labor movement got out there and helped turn the primary around to help get him to win the primary out of the state of South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Keith, would you like to add to this question?
Well, Charles stole a bunch of my thunder, but that's fine. I would be very much wanting to introduce tighter and better definitions for this contracting, because that is where so much of this abuse is. And an really important aspect is that we have to fund in the investigative or parts of the government to follow up and make sure the laws are enforced. We can pass all the laws we want, but if there's no funding for enforcement, that'll be a real problem. So I would be interested in introducing better, tighter definitions of who is classified as a contractor, as well as making sure the money's to follow up on grievances. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the sake of time, again, I would like to go to the question about healthcare. Healthcare is an extremely important issue. And as you know, healthcare insurance is a hook to keep workers in a job they hate because of the need. Do you believe that if we have a healthcare program that does not depend on a job, that would be a win-win for the workers and the businesses? Senator McLeod?
Yes. I do believe that healthcare should not be tied to a job. When it is, these businesses can use that as leverage to keep people in unsafe working conditions and to not pay them what they deserve and what they need. So as somebody who, I believe I'm the only candidate in this race who lives with a chronic health condition. I've been very open about the fact that I have sickle cell. I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia, and as governor, I'm going to make it my priority to fight for a South Carolina where everybody can thrive and where everybody matters. That's only possible when we have the rights and freedoms to make our own healthcare decisions. I'm also, a woman, of course. I'm the only candidate in this race who has a uterus. And I'm tired of our male-dominated legislature and governor coming for our reproductive rights and freedoms. I mean, that's the reason that I introduced the Viagra bill, to broaden that conversation, the Pro-Birth Accountability Act, to make sure that these senators and representatives have an opportunity, the state as a whole has an opportunity to help cover the cost of mandated births from conception to college. And I just think that, healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. And so we have to fight from that position. And I will have the bully pulpit and the platform to do that as governor, a much bigger voice and an opportunity to really put some teeth behind those priorities as governor in ways that I don't have currently as a member of the South Carolina Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Charles, do you think that having the healthcare that is not hooked to a job will be great for labor unions?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And like I tell them at the negotiation table, because healthcare for union workers are negotiated at the bargaining table. And we even got some union members where they say if you go to healthcare for everyone, that it's going to hurt us. And I say to them, it's a God-given right for everybody to have health care. And so we in the union now actually is at of the opinion that yes, everybody should have health care, and it won't hurt us at the bargaining table.
Thank you so much. And Keith, your comments about that?
Well, I'm glad to hear the leadership of the unions is seeing the benefit that we would have in negotiating by getting that issue off the bargaining table. And then we can get back to focusing on wages and working conditions. So I believe it would be a win-win, and it'd be a win for the businesses too, because by cutting out 1/3 of our medical overhead that goes to administration and profits, we would be able to get better health care and cost everyone less. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely we need healthcare as a human right. And if we believe in what Martin Luther King says about it, definitely a lot of more people should be on board for that. And our last question, and it's almost time to go, oh, time flies. Is the South Carolina Labor Department sufficiently staffed and motivated to investigate workers' complaints on safety and health issues? What, if any, workplace protections exist in South Carolina for LGBTQ plus employees? Senator?
Okay, I'm dealing with mute again. So I apologize for that. So the question was, what protections are in place for LGBTQ
Yes.
employees?
Yes.
You know, I am anti-discrimination across the board. I will continue to be that way, as anti-discrimination as governor of South Carolina. You know, when I think about SCDU and OSHA and all of the different pieces that should be in play when it comes to the protections of all South Carolina workers, particularly those who are LGBTQ and experience discrimination simply because of their sexual orientation. I will make sure as governor that I prioritize those communities that have always been marginalized. And I think my legislative record shows and proves that I have the courage to lead on those issues. I just took to the well of the Senate a week ago and talked about, you know, the ridiculousness of trying to marginalize transgender students in the name of women's safety when it comes to sports. Those are some of the distractions and some of the wedge issues that our Republican majority chooses to champion. I'll continue to work across the aisle as best I can to ensure that our policies help all workers and so that everybody can enjoy a workplace free of discrimination. I think discrimination and harassment have no place in the workplace, and it will have no place in my administration. I don't think that South Carolina currently has a statewide law that expressly prohibits discrimination based on in the workplace, rather, based on sexual orientation or gender identity. But we know that even if there are some protections in place, you know, these Republicans are going to find their way around those protections to make sure that they are able to discriminate against those who are not like them. And so our young people, particularly in those spaces, will do exactly what my sons want to do and leave our state. And I will make every effort to avoid that. We need to do everything we can to keep our best and brightest here. And if, and I just believe that that means, you know, adding sexual orientation and gender identity to my list of issues and challenges that we need to prioritize so that there is no discrimination in the workplace when it comes to our LGBTQ plus community.
Thank you so much. We have 3 minutes. So Charles, we still have Charles and Kit's answers and give the word back to Hal. So let's see if we can make it in 3 minutes. Go ahead, Charles.
Just 3 minutes, I can do that right quick. Like that's here to again. That's the other thing is that we being a part of the union, we don't tolerate discrimination. And that's what I tell a lot of people at the bargaining table we do things and put laws that governs your international unions into place. And I always tell the average female, it's one thing in joining the union, you got your equal rights for equal pay. Because in the union, they just don't negotiate wages just for men. But when they go get a contract negotiation table, if it's $30 an hour for a male to run a crane, that same crane is $30 an hour for a female. And so we strengthen laws in the union, anti-discrimination, okay?
Thank you so much. And Keith?
Well, I'd be very much interested in introducing in the House the legislation necessary to expand the protected classes. And then we'd leave it up to Governor McLeod to sign it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you, for participating today. And I pass it back to Hal.
Thank you so much, Lucero. Let me just see if I can play around a little bit with the video there. What a great forum, really exciting. And I love that last question because unions have been, and there's certainly a record, there's certainly a history where unions have discriminated against people of color, against women. We have seen that, but we have seen also, and I think the more powerful and the more recent evidence is exactly what Mr. Charles Brave said. Unions saying, hey, you work a full day, you get a full day's pay, period. We represent everyone. You all get a fair deal, a square deal. And we know the UAW marched with Dr. King. We know that unions were an instrumental part of bringing about civil rights. And one final point is when people are treated fairly on the job, they tend to be less bitter and angry in other aspects of their lives. So you see less racial animus, you see less tension between men and women, husbands and wives, people whose sexuality is not considered within the norm or in the past, and others. Those tensions are reduced when people think and know that they're getting a fair deal at work, that their boss isn't living that much better than they are. And I think, Mr. Brave, you're probably nodding as I'm saying that because we have seen this throughout history, and
Sure.
a big reason why I'm a huge supporter of labor, because it makes life better for everyone. All right, let me see if I can just go back real quick and share screen. There's a march, and speaking of women's rights, I just want to mention there is a march this afternoon in South Carolina's capital. That would be Columbia, where Lucero is. And let me just skip through if I can. This thing's a little wonky today. There it is. Bands Off Our Bodies in Columbia, May 14th. Please join if you can. I've got the link in there, Women's March/event. I'm going to try to put it in the chat real quick if I can. So if you got a chance to click, you can do so. And then the only other event, I think we've got a couple of others. Let's see if we've got them in here. Get involved with Our Revolution South Carolina. That's, it's just the way we have to organize. We have to organize together if we're going to win together. This event is a perfect example. We're phone banking for great progressives across the country, including Senator McLeod. So like Senator McLeod, we're phone banking. So we really want you to join us. ourrev.us/phone bank, easy to remember. And then our upcoming call, it's a week from Monday, and there is one of our board members, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. I was going to say Minneapolis, that would be the capital, that's where he is. Keith Ellison, his son Jeremiah Ellison, I know, great source of pride to the dad, is a council member in, I believe, the Minneapolis city area. All right, thank you all for joining us, and I'll do a real quick chant. When we organize, we win.
We
We
will.
win.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.